welcome. I'm Ross Walkup from Venice, Florida. I'm up here in Franklin, North Carolina at the car show along with the barbecue festival here, and I'm driving a 1909 Stanley Steamer Model Z mountain wagon. These cars were built back in the early days for hotel use only. They would pick up the passengers at the railroad station and take them to the hotels, and that's what they were, a commercial type vehicle. I'm in the bus business, and so that's why I've got the car. I've always been interested in steam stuff. As you can see here, the car has a big boiler up in front where the engine in a normal car would be. And underneath there's a burner that you can either burn kerosene, or I burn a mixture of diesel and gasoline because it's easier to get and cheaper than kerosene. And that heats up the water there and makes steam. And the engine is mounted on the rear axle back here. It's 2 cylinders, and you get power on both sides of the cylinder, or the piston. So really you get the same number of power strokes you would in a V8 internal combustion 4-cycle car of the day. They were very powerful for their day. You could climb the mountains with them because you had full torque at no RPM. So as soon as you opened the throttle, you didn't have to worry about slipping any clutches or anything like that. You just took off and went. I've owned the car about 5 or 6 years now, and I got it out of Pennsylvania. It's all wood. The fenders and the body and the frame and everything's wood on it. And so that's basically what it is. It's a lot of fun. Everybody wants to know how fast it'll go. I usually travel in the 40 to 50 mile an hour range. I have had it over 60, but 40 to 50 is plenty fast. And they all want to know how it climbs the mountains. Well, I took it up to Highlands, North Carolina the day before yesterday, up the mountains there, and I haven't found anything yet it won't climb. It's just been a great car to have, and I've really enjoyed it.
Where we are today, and then start talking about this.
I don't know where we are. I'm Dan Freeman. This is my 1928 C-Cab delivery. I built all of it. I first built it in 1984, rebuilt it again in 1990-something, and getting ready to rebuild it again. Afraid to get rid of it, I won't get another one.
Wood? All wood?
No, the body is wood, everything else is steel except for the fenders, and they're fiberglass. The rest of the pieces are steel that I hand form. And I have a lot of fun with it.
You live here?
I live in Otto.
What do you do up in this area? Or did you?
I'm general manager of the local hardware store.
Cool. Well, thank you, sir.
Well, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bob Parker. I have a Jack Rouse Mustang. My wife and I purchased this car in Knoxville, Tennessee at Bill Hankin. It was 427. It has carbon fiber dash, has custom jacks interior. It's a 5-speed. It's 450 horsepower. It's one of the nicest cars that we ever seen. When we was over at the dealership, we looked at the car, drove the car, and fell in love with the car. Unfortunately, it's a little faster than my wife wants to drive, so I get the privilege of driving the car. It moved around to the back. I'll show you where Jack signed it for me. Here at the dealership, Jack came in, signed the dashboard for me. He signed underneath the hood for me. And he was a really nice gentleman. I told him I wanted a toolbox and I couldn't afford it. And he gave me this, signed it, and dated it. One of the nicest people I ever met in my life. My wife and I just love this car. And believe it or not, this is the first Ford I ever owned in my life. They say I got a good one.
Really? Yeah. Did not know that.
Prime Country is Brisket.
Fit or not, are they? Yeah. Just over just a little bit. How's that? Well, that one on the right. Yeah, you pick which one of those two you want. I like the way that one's that piece sticking on the end over here. This one. You want to look to see if there's something else on there we left on it? No.
Let it just laid in there like it was meant to be there.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I said one of those two, because I knew that. Alright, here's going to be the hard part right here.
Okay, this was a chicken category here at Franklin, North Carolina, and the 6 categories were all thighs. The first one, I wrote some little notes here. The outside of this sample was very good. The inside was a little on the dry side. Liked it, overall. It just missed a little something on taste and tenderness. The second sample was very good. It had a great flavor on the outside. Tenderness was nailed. Didn't have the flavor going all the way through, so just knocked it down just a little bit. 1 point on that. Third sample seemed like someone who was kind of new at the game. The outside was very tough. The sauce didn't blend in well with the sample. The inside was very mushy. It looked good and looked okay in the box, but it just needs to a lot more work on that. Third sample, it was very sweet, and almost too sweet in my taste preference. The next sample I thought was the best. I 9'd it across the board. It had a good look in the box, nice and consistent. The flavor carried all the way through to the sample. The tenderness was just right. I thought it was a strong entry. The last entry looked pretty good. Knocked it off a little bit of on appearance. It just didn't look as good as I thought it could, mainly because of the sauce consistency on the outside of it. It had a very strong smoke flavor that I thought overpowered the taste overall.
All right, I'll agree almost across the board with my fellow judge. Number 1 looked really good. It was just a little bit dry. Number 2 had a good taste, not a great taste. The tenderness was just nailed perfectly. Number 3 was tough, skin wouldn't pull off. The meat was a little tough. Number 4 had a good flavor, very sweet, almost a little bit of an oriental, but a real good flavor. Number 5, just as my fellow judge said, good taste, skin pulled apart, meat was well done. 6th one almost seemed like lighter fluid and a little bit too much heat, just kind of overpowering.
Number 1 looked good coming out of the box, but it had a strong after pepper taste. Number 2 also looked good coming out of the box. I had a clean bite with that, and there was a nutty aftertaste. Number 3 did not pull cleanly, but had a simple taste. A few seconds after eating it, there was too much afterburn, where I had to have the water and the crackers, and it was too mushy on the tenderness. On the 4th sample, although it came off in a clean bite, there was still too much of a peppery aftertaste. On the 4th sample, came off at a clean bite, but way too much spice. And on the last sample, it came away as a clean bite, too much of a smoky aftertaste, too much sauce. On the tenderness, a little bit on the mushy side.
Well, I guess I'm last, right? I thought this was a beautiful box. All the boxes were really nice with one exception. The first one I thought was very nice in appearance. It was dry, however. I felt it was a little bit dry. The taste was very good. I liked the way the taste. Number 2 is my favorite. I thought number 2 was very moist, but I also could taste chicken with the spices and the sauce. And to me, that's what I'm looking for, is to be able to taste the meat. Number 3, this is the only one I didn't like in the box, and I think that it was overcooked. It was extremely dry, my piece was, and I didn't care for the taste. Number 4 had a charcoal taste to me. It's like, I don't know, you could tell it came out of a charcoal grill, but I don't like the charcoal taste. It was a little too spicy, a little too hot spicy, but it was very moist. Number 5, I thought was tasty. I thought it was a little bit dry, but it was a tasty sample. And number 6 was just a little dry. Number 6 to me had too much sauce. I didn't mark down because it had too much sauce, because I don't think that that's taste or tenderness, but it did have a little more sauce than I would like to see. But overall, it had a good taste.
They were all pretty good ribs. Some of them, as you can tell, were overcooked, like the 4th entry there. None of them had what I would consider a real great flavor, but they were all cooked either just right on the edge of being perfect or just a little overdone. And they weren't a bad group of ribs, they just weren't a great group of ribs.
I found that most all of them were very good. Enjoyed the difference in the taste and flavors and the spices that they added to it, but each one of them had a different taste maybe, but overall I think they got some pretty good ribs. It'd be hard to pick a favorite.
Same here. I think all of them were very good. One of them pulled extra meat off of the bone, so I was a little concerned about that. But other than that, they all look beautiful.
I'd say I probably would echo that too. I had one that, to me that stood out a little bit more, but I had one that also you could tell was obviously a little bit overcooked, a few degrees over on that because it pulled off as I was trying to take my sample. But overall, again, they were, all very close and very good.
I agree. I don't think we had any bad ribs. All of them were okay. The second one I thought was exceptional. I liked it. It almost, to me, had an Asian flair to it. And then the 5th one also, just tremendous flavor. Cooked well. All in all, we had some good ribs today.
Yep, they were all very, very good. There were a few that were overcooked, that were a little bit dry, but they all pretty much, the first 4 to me pretty much had the same flavor. But they were all very good overall. Weren't any bad ones.
It's a great group of judges. These people know what they're doing. I would not trade these guys for any other table of judges in here.
This number 1 entry was served with only in chunks. There was no shredding or not, just in chunks, and it was dry, and it was just a little chewy, and there was not very much flavor to it. This one here had some vinegar on it, which was balanced real good, and it was presented in 2 forms, in chopped and chunked, which was good, and that had a good flavor to it. This one here was only presented in just chunks, and it's a little overdone. It just crumbles, tears apart, mushy in the mouth after you eat it. And then this one down here was presented in 3 forms. It was chopped, it was chunked, and it was a square burnt end or anything, but it's well overdone. It's just mushy, and didn't really like the flavor of it. This one here was presented in just chunks and shredded, which was very good as far as taste, but it's overdone. It just falls apart, just mushing. But the flavor was good on that one. And this one here, the last one, was there was 2 entries, or it entered in chunks and chopped, and 2 again. This was just real mushy, not too much flavor to it, and that's about it.
Well, I'm going to echo a lot of what he said. This was chopped. That was the only presentation. And one of the bad things that happens is it was cold. There's not a lot they can do about that. And it had no flavor. So there was really no flavor. There was nothing going for it. The second one, it was chopped and it was in chunks. The flavor was fairly good, coming on the heels of the one that had no flavor. But it was overcooked. I found it mushy. This third one, it was tender, but it had overwhelming vinegar sauce. This one, number 4, it came in chunks, and it also had some that had been chopped. It looked good. It had great presentation, and it's tough to make the pork look good. They are doing a lot of work with the money muscle that helps the pork look good. The taste was so-so, and the flavor was so-so, but it looked good. One of the things that I try to look for, smell for, I guess I should say, is smoke. This is barbecue. We gotta smell smoke. This one had a slight smoky smell, and it looked good, had good presentation, had a good flavor, and it was tender. This one was my favorite. The last one came in chunks, and it had been chopped. It was overcooked, didn't have a great taste.
I don't have a whole lot to add. The one thing I did notice, though, is that overall I thought that they were mushy, overcooked. I thought the first one was very unappetizing in the box as far as presentation. The second one, it had kind of a funny sort of taste to it. I wasn't really too impressed with it. The third one was very dry, and I would not rate it very high. The fourth one, I found it was mushy. Here again, I think that the pulled part of it might have gotten away with it, but the rest of it didn't. It kind of hurt itself by having the different types in that same box. The fifth one was mushy. It had a little bit of smoke, but it had more smoke than anything else of the other 5 that were there. And then the last one I found was not good, except I did like a little bit of the chunk. The chunk looked like it was closer to being done than the pulled part of it. Is what I noticed on it. I think they'd have gotten a higher score if they had just stayed with the chunk and not put the pulled pork in it.
I thought that 4, 5, and 6 all were very nice presentations, generous with multi-cuts of meat. I agree that 2 and 3 had a little bit of especially 3 with the vinegar sauce was overpowering. But 4, 5, and 6 were overcooked and mushy. And I'm going to disagree with everyone else. I really liked 1. I liked the simple presentation. And I felt that the porkiness came through that was disguised in a lot of the other cuts.
The first one was very tough for me and very chewy. It took a while to get it down. And as everyone else has mentioned, 3 and 4 and 5 were presented very well. And so my favorite overall actually was 2. I did like the little different flavor, and overall the presentation with the extra pieces of meat were very good.
Well, I found number 1 to be unappetizing as far as looking at it in the presentation. It was dry, a little overcooked, and I actually had gristle or tendon in mine, 2 or 3 pieces that I had that I couldn't eat. The second one, I thought, hint of smoke in it, thought it was cooked well. It was probably my choice of the 6 presentations made. I had outside bark I liked and the inside pulled pork. The third one, a little over vinegary, a little overcooked. The fourth one, I think, was just overcooked. I didn't like the taste. It didn't kind of strike me. The fifth one, I liked the taste of it more than I did the others, but unfortunately it was a little stringy and tough on the outside and a little mushy for the inside. The fourth one, the chop portion, was mushy. If they'd have stayed with just the outside chunks, I think it would have scored better than on its own by itself there.
What, meatloaf slices?
Yeah, but when they get a mouthful of that, they're going to go 6. Wow.
I'll give them 7 pieces, maybe. Is that slice too big? Yeah, that slice too big. Look at this smaller slice. It don't even look like the rest of them, does it? All right, close enough. All right, let's run some down the side here. Hopefully I can put these in here.
Okay, I scored, well, number 1 was a little dry to me. Didn't have a lot of taste. Number 2 came in, it was chopped. Actually had a little taste to it and was kind of moist. I never seen it chopped before. Number 3 I had, it was a little tough and dry. No taste. 4 dry, 5 dry. I mean, I didn't have a lot of good brisket. I don't know about y'all.
All right, I think item one was beautifully presented, looked good, but when you tasted it, it was dry, and it really didn't have I think that good rich flavor you want out of brisket. Number 2 looked dry and was dry and had very little taste. I was disappointed in it. And number 3 I thought was a very good looking entry. The taste was very good. It was so I gave it high marks for appearance. I gave it high marks for taste. Of the 5 entries, I think entry 3 was my favorite. Number 4 was another nice entry, really good. It's all these would these last 2 would particularly ones I'd be proud to have for dinner any night. And then the last entry, to me it looked fatty and tasted dry, which I think is a remarkable thing to achieve. But they did it. And so I think entries 3 and 4 were the my favorites in this contest.
The first entry was dry, did not have much flavor, no smoky aroma, and was slightly tough. The second sample looked like pulled pork. It was dry. Taste was okay. Nothing to write home about. It was overcooked and mealy. 3, had a good smoky taste to it, good appearance. It was slightly dry. The best part about it were the burnt ends, which were excellent. 4, appeared dry, was a little dry, no smoke flavor, and it was slightly tough. 5, again bland, no smoke flavor, dry and slightly tough.
Okay, number 1 I thought was a little bit off on the flavor. It was tender though, and appearance was very good. Number 2, appearance was good. It was the shredded kind of beef brisket. Did have some flavor depending what part of the box you pulled some meat from. Slightly tough, but not too bad. Number 3 was my favorite. It had a good flavor to it. The bark was excellent. It had like a sweetness to it. It also pulled apart very, very good. Very, very good. That was my favorite. Number 4 had a good flavor. It pulled apart. It was a little dry. The 5th one had a streak of fat on the top. I did not grade off for that. I'm not sure it should have been there, but it did not have a real good flavor, but it did have a good tenderness to it.
Number 1, I didn't think it had a whole lot of taste to it, and other than that, it looked good in the box, but just no taste. Number 2 is kind of like a shredded or pulled apart brisket. The part that I picked up was very tender and had pretty good taste to it. Number 3 I thought was best overall. Tender, tastes good. Number 4 was a little bit dry and a little tough. And number 5 was also tough, and the presentation wasn't quite as good.